Welcome to another episode of the Football Analytics Show. My name is Ed Fang, your host, and on this episode, I am truly pumped to have Spanky on the show. He is a professional sports bettor, and he is the creator of Bet Bash, and we're going to talk about both of those today. Spanky, welcome to the show.
Ed, my man, always a pleasure to come back on the Power Rank. I remember the first time I was on here. I don't know if you remember, but the phrase that's so common now in the industry, top-down betting. I'm the first time I actually used that phrase, and kind of it's now widely used all around the industry, was on your show, the Power Rank. So it's a fun fact that I'm proud to share with you.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you mentioned that. When you talked about that, I knew that you had kind of been thinking about those ideas, and I think you were doing like some kind of presentation for like Professor Harry Crane's sports betting course or something like that, right?
Yes.
And then you came on and you talked about like top-down betting, and then we were talking to our mutual friend Mike Craig, and he said that I asked him about top-down betting on the next time he came on this podcast, and he was like, "What the heck is that, dude?"
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's funny how, to describe kind of what I've done, I had to think about it, and I had this diagram that I think you've seen it, but where people are trying to climb a ladder, so they're kind of working bottom up, and there's people falling off the ladder and doing all this thing, and I'm over here at the top, and the pot of gold is on top, and I'm just sitting there, just taking the gold and just sticking it in my pocket, and that's how I looked at it, in which where I envisioned top down versus a bottom up betting style.
I have this vision that I'm going to create a short episode on this podcast that talks about just that, getting your original clip when you talked about it. And I will obviously include what you just said as well. Just a note before we get into the show, I was recently looking at my podcast analytics, and that is the most downloaded episode on this podcast ever.
Wow.
So that's all you, Spanky.
An honor, Ed.
Well, it's an honor for me. I mean, 100 years from now, when I'm, in my grave telling someone about this podcast, I'm gonna be like, yeah, well, this podcast that started the term top-down betting. That's going to be what I tell people.
Listen, man. The first time I met you, Ed, at Sloan, I knew you were my kind of guy. You're you're a good friend, and I love hanging out with you, and to be able to share that on your podcast and to be able to hang out whenever we get together is always a pleasure. You're one of my favorite guys in the business, my friend.
Yeah, right back at you. I appreciate that a lot. The Football Analytics Show is brought to you by the Power Ranks Sports Betting Newsletter. Looking for some action on any given weekend? This is the free service for you, as 5 Nugget Saturday is my curated list of tips and analytics. To sign up for free, go to thepowerrank.com. Spanky, it's been 2 years since you've been on this podcast. Just want to maybe give the listeners a refresher about how you approach sports betting and how that may have changed over the last 2 years as this ever-evolving landscape kind of shifts beneath us.
Yeah, so I used to be strictly a top-down bettor, and to try to find inefficiencies and looking for line discrepancies and whatnot. And then, you kind of slowly but surely you have to evolve in the business for account longevity purposes. And then, for what we do now essentially is a kind of a hybrid where we try to, and we've always done that to some extent, but we're still going to be able to do our top down. It's what we have. It's in my back pocket. I could always rely on it. But I try to find, the best handicappers in the world. And we try to pair up with them to try to be betting partners with them to try to then, make money together by using my ability, which is, to be able to get down in as much as possible and as quiet as possible. The most important things to be a successful sports bettor are outs and information. And I made a podcast about this. Information could be your handicapping abilities, could be your mathematical prowess, could be your tapping into injury markets, etc. But you can have all these things, but if you don't have the outs, or if you don't have the sports books or the places to be able to write your action, then all that stuff is meaningless. So you need both of those things to kind of to take you to the next level. And we take pride on always having a plethora of outs and the ability to get down. That's where our huge, I believe, our huge competitive advantages, and that's what is able to have the top handicappers in the world kind of gear towards us and say, man, I want to work with Spanky because it's hassle free. He could get down for us both. We both make money. I don't have to worry about the logistics of betting and the logistics of settling and working with bookmakers and getting kicked out and limited and stuff. We kind of solve that issue to some extent. It's never fully solved. We're still evolving, day after day, week after week, year after year. But that's where really our most, edge lies.
So Spanky, you've built this huge network of accounts to bet things. You have a team that does that. Give me some sense for the number of years that it takes to build that kind of operation. You've been doing this for a long time. Maybe give them a sense for the history.
Yeah, listen, injury networks, just the injury network alone, and that has taken decades to build. To just know the right people to call and the right, at the right schools and the right places all around the country. That's, there was a time in which, and I've always mentioned this in the past, but there was a time before Twitter, before any of this happened, we would call universities up and we would pose as either alumni or we would pose as working for the school newspaper to try to, and we would call the athletic department, try to talk to them. We've talked to coaches directly in the past, or
Wow.
try to talk to somebody in the athletic department, try to find out how a practice went or how something based on injury. And then we've just slowly grown and grown to try to build this huge network of information. Information flows through us, and then we're able to share that information with people that give us information, and that just takes years and years and years to build because it's an information game. If I could know somebody is out before the rest of the world, if that was happening in the stock market, that would be insider trading, and you get locked up for that. And however, in the sports betting world, knowing that a quarterback is injured before the rest of the world is fair game. So, we take pride in that, and that's a huge thing. When it comes to the outs, Ed, that again just takes years and years to develop. We kind of I kind of got public facing on Twitter in the last several years to try to build that out network, to try to let people be aware of who I was and to try to be able to, raise awareness to say, hey, listen, if I have extra accounts and if I want to be able to have betting partnerships with somebody that's a pro that could win, I would be their guy. So it's just a lot of building over the years, and thankfully, we're in a good state. So
Excellent. So the bit about how you've accumulated accounts is pretty interesting to me. You first got onto social media with videos about how you were getting kicked out of these domestic books, right?
yeah, that because everybody, there's so many touts out there that'll claim that, hey, listen, I'm the best. I look at my record and all this stuff. At that time when I made those videos, nobody was ever doing that. Nobody was putting out videos of getting kicked out because most people couldn't get kicked out because they just weren't winning. Where now it's obviously it just become a standard, but back then when we were doing it, I'm like, how do I separate myself and show people that, listen, I'm a winning sports bettor. Maybe you should partner up with me. I'm legit. And I'm not trying to sell any picks or anything like that, but I'm trying to get accounts to bet into because I can't bet into these places myself. They won't allow me to. So that was the whole kind of marketing strategy that we developed, and it's worked out. But that's years and years ago. We're still relying. That's why we'll get into Bet Bash, but we're still trying to grow our network more and more because you have to keep up and be able to keep getting down and to satisfy your appetite. And we have a pretty big appetite. I got 20 employees, so in order to feed and all their mouths and their families and have betting partners, we got to get down significant amounts to be able to keep this train going along the tracks.
You still have those first videos pinned on your social media, so it looks like it's 2018. The question I wanted to ask you since then, like, how much has your ability to get down grown since then?
Tremendously. tremendously, and not just because of the not mainly because of the of how I've grown my persona and stuff. A lot of it has to do with the industry. Um, the industry before regulated bookmaking was in America. You'd have your offshore outs that we've dealt with, and you'd have decent limits, but they were never. There was never a wide spectrum of limits. Whereas today in the regulated market, there are places essentially that'll if they think that you're have a winning ability, they're going to limit you to $1.37. Whereas if they think you're a loser, they'll let you bet $137,000
Yep.
on the
Yep.
same exact game, and then everything in between. So our ability then, as we realize, it's important then to try to essentially game theory trick these sports books into incorrectly profiling us, and allowing us to then fire away. And that's become the strategy in the last several years, to be able to do what we had to do to, they set the rules. It's their world. We just live in it. And we're just trying to, utilize their greed and their inability to actually be bookmakers, and instead just, kick out winners and accept all big losers. We wanted to then, I paired up. I'm lucky to pair up with several former losers who then had a longer leash to be able to put in some winning plays, and to be able to then to again just try to win in the most covert fashion. I kind of try to give an analogy of like a mosquito, as opposed to like a Dracula, where a Dracula is going to suck your blood dry in, one or two bites, whereas we're like a mosquito, where we're just trying to take drops, little drops at a time, and wet our beak, and then be able to just keep eating for a long time.
The last time you were on this podcast, you did talk about that strategy. You talked about it on one of the big domestic books that on DraftKings. So it does sound like a lot of those strategies are still working.
Absolutely, and as long as the greed is there, and the VIP programs are there, the strategies will work. And you just sometimes they might change things, and it sucks. Like, listen, I hate playing this cat and mouse game. It's not something that I enjoy doing, but it's out of necessity. If I had to use my own name to bet in a regulated market in the United States of America, I'd be out of business today. I just can't do it. So I have to then just utilize what they do. They set the rules, and then we have to just play within those rules, and that's what we do.
Spanky, my understanding is with you mentioned the ambition that you have, that you're mostly betting on major sports. Is that still true? And are there any other markets that are kind of getting big enough for you guys to bet into?
Mostly it's college. So college is always has been our forte, just because there's just so many games, and the edge is realized a lot faster. Do we still bet the NFL? Yes. NBA? Yes. Again, the pro sports are harder to beat. Baseball. But no, college is always going to be our forte. And we're sticking with that. We find that, and then again, do we do a little bit of props here and there? We touch on it. There's some groups that are professional. That's all they do is props, and we found it so that again, there's different strategies. Some people like to go right for the jugular, bet the props, get kicked out. I try to take as much money as possible and get kicked out fast. Where and get a high return, where we could settle on a lower return and try to have the account just last a lot longer, and to be able to just again use that mosquito strategy of just slowly extracting.
So college football, college basketball are still huge for you. Like, will there ever be a third sport? Like, will college hockey ever be a big enough market, or you
No,
are mostly?
college hockey will never. But we can't even beat the regular hockey, the NHL. We haven't bet NHL in God knows how long. And college hockey, there's just no market for that. It's college football, college basketball, NBA, NFL, and those are the big ones.
NFL props have definitely gotten bigger over the last couple years. Can you get enough down on those to make it worth you guys betting them?
Yeah, the NFL props is nice. That's always, again, but when you look at it, NFL props, you have, there's what, 17 weeks now, or I think it's 17 weeks now, Ed, or 18, 17 weeks now. Yeah. So, you have 17 Sundays essentially. Whereas when you look at college football or college basketball, there's hundreds of games a week. And in the NFL, there's, hundreds of games a season. It's just, we want to, and we want to be able to cover as much space and when you have an edge, you want to be able to turn that edge as many times as possible, and have the opportunity to just keep using that hammer and keep striking that hammer down. And that's what college sports gives us, that opportunity to keep striking because there's just so many more games. um, and if there's ever something wrong with in our ability to win, you can kind of notice it a lot faster in college sports, than in pro sports, particularly in the NFL, just because the NFL, given the low number of games, and by the time you think your edge is, you realize your edge is, you think you have an edge, it might be long gone until again, just a sample size problem. There's just not many games that are just played. So I think instead of concentrating on that, we're looking to try to get into other sports, tennis, a lot of the matchup sports, etc. But yeah, that's on the table. But again, it's a lot of things. Our plate is so full as it is, with what we got. Soccer would be ideal also because that's always going around. But again, living on the East Coast, it's just difficult. So, um,
Well, and soccer's got to be a pretty big market, especially the biggest leagues in Europe, right? And then you have it all year round, so it could have just an opportunity for so many matches, right?
yeah, and a lot of the, yes, soccer is huge, man. You know what I mean? If it's the biggest thing out there, and especially these big leagues in Europe, and but we never got into it, and in live betting, in play betting is another thing that we've just never got into. That there are groups that are just dominating that. I to be the jack of all, master of none is a tough thing in this business.
Sure.
I don't want to. I'd rather just focus on what we know. We're the master of a few things. That's our bread and butter. That's what we do well, and we're going to stick to it. In order for us to kind of, you know, spread ourselves, we don't want to spread ourselves too thin. So I think just sticking to what we know is the strategy that's worked. And unless the strategy isn't working, and we find out that the need to have to expand, I think then the pressure to do so will be there. But for now, I think we're happy where we're at.
Excellent. It's 2025. As someone who does mathematical modeling, I wanted to ask you your perspective on how useful it is in terms of different sports. What's your perspective for using models to bet on sports, or at least a part of the process?
Yeah, it's listen, models are what drives everything. The best modelers in the world are the ones that are able to beat the high liquidity sports. So there are a very few select people out there that could beat NFL sides and totals, and a lot of these other different big sports, NBA sides and totals. And then as the liquidity goes down into the college, and then slowly then goes down into the props and into the obscure markets, the models are easier to build, and the sports are easier to beat, but the ability to get down is a lot harder. When I say get down a substantial sum of money. So, what we like to, we try to pair up with the groups that have the successful models that bet huge money that on a sport that we can get enough down, to satisfy everybody's appetite. Um, that's the whole thing. Somebody comes to me and says, "Listen, I have this great college football player prop model," and that's great and all, but I just can't do it. You know what I mean? In order for everybody to eat and for me to allocate the time, and I'm sure it wins, and I'm sure you're successful at it, and somebody, and I'm sure the numbers are so inefficient, but that's why you can't bet that much. So, given that the level we're at, winning again, I've said this in the past, winning it becomes trivial at a certain point. Um, it's about what you want to win at so that you can get the most money and get the best, make the most money possible. And that doesn't mean having the highest return, because having a double digit return on thousands of dollars versus having single digit return on millions of dollars is, you can't compare the two. So that's why we're always focused on the sports that you can get down the most on, and those are the people that we, the modelers that we kind of want to deal with, the bottom up groups that we want to deal with on the sports that we're able to get down the most.
Feel free not to answer this, but let's say the college football prop market changed. Like, how much would you need to get down on a particular prop over a bunch of sports books to make it worth it for your group to get involved?
Probably 50,000. I'm just throwing a number out there. Just to make it worth it for us, which is impossible. It's very difficult. Can it be done? Sure, but again, you don't just look at the 1 week, because if you're betting college football props and you're betting that at scale, and if you have you're probably going to have a high return rate there. Again, the props, in my opinion, are especially in the college level, but are the thing that is going to alert the sports books to say, hey, wait a minute, this is a customer persona non grata type that they just
Right.
don't want to get involved. So it's not just thinking about today's earn or tomorrow's earn. I'm thinking about next month's earn, next year's earn, and that's what we got to think about. Where if we're beating an NFL market or a college football market on these big games, it's a lot more palatable. And and we start sticking parlays in there and stuff like that, where we kind of hide the work, and um, this type of stuff is where where we have such a longer leash, historically speaking.
Is tennis and golf getting to the point where those are not sports that immediately get you limited?
Yeah, tennis. They're international. It depends. These are international sports. They're good. We're dabbling in them a little bit. And it's nothing crazy. I mean, it doesn't compare to any of the volume that we're doing in college sports.
Okay.
So I can't really comment too much on that. But we're always interested in trying different things. But since, like I said before, Ed, our plates are just so full with what we're doing
Yeah.
now that we haven't really thought about kind of expanding so much.
Spanky, tell everyone about Bet Bash and what to expect at this conference in August in Las Vegas.
Well, Bet Bash, Ed, you were there at the first one. And it's been a five. We're Bet Bash 5 now. This will be our 5th year, and I always think of Bet Bash as a four pronged beast, where we focus on networking, we focus on legends, education, and fun. We have 24 seminars, 6 live podcasts, one of which you'll be hosting, Ed. Um, uh, and then we have different networking opportunities. We have 4 open bars. We have the legends, honoring the legends at the Sports Gambling Hall of Fame. We have watch parties both at the Circus Sportsbook at Stadium Swim. Again, Bet Bash takes place live at the Circa Resort in Las Vegas, August 12th through the 15th. It's our 5th year doing it. The attendance keeps going up every year. The feedback is incredible. We have a 94, 95% return rate for attendees that have come. So it's something that I'm really proud of. And again, it's something that I've created based out of necessity to try to expand the network. A lot of
Yeah.
people say, "Thank you, Spanky, for creating Bet Bash. You've changed my life. I've met this person and that person." And then I love, I listen, and who doesn't like to be thanked or admired for anything? But in all reality, I created Bet Bash for selfish reasons to try to make sure I was able to meet people to get outs,
Right.
and and that's the truth. I'm not, I'm glad I'm able to connect other people. That's really very rewarding for me, because in the sports betting world, that, as it's an empty world. You're not really changing society and making it better. Where any most other jobs, no matter what you do, you're making the world a better place. If me and my guys don't go to work tomorrow, nobody gives a except our own internal, families. The world doesn't miss us. Where if as a plumber misses his job tomorrow, somebody's toilet's gonna stay clogged. If a construction worker misses his job tomorrow, somebody's house ain't getting built. Same thing for a doctor. Somebody's gonna stay sick. But for a sports better, nobody cares about us. It's no, we're not an important part of the ecosystem. So to be able to create this whole bet bash and change people's lives for the better to help their earn out is very, very rewarding for me, and I'm so proud of where we've come now going into year 5.
I think you've done a great job with it. If you go back to before Bet Bash existed, what happened is we would all meet up in Boston and hover around the Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, and that was fun, and we still do that, but it's not the density of people who are who make a living betting on sports. And Bet Bash really is that event, and you can come and meet people and it's a really great thing that you've done for the community and getting people together. So, anyways, I want to congratulate you on that for sure.
Thank you, Ed. It means a lot to me, brother. I appreciate it.
What are can you tell people the date and how they can get their tickets?
Yeah, betbash.co is the website. Our seminar schedule was just released. Dates are August 12th through the 15th. We got different ticket options, VIP tickets versus general admission tickets. All the details are on the website. I'm excited again for this year. So we have 6 Hall of Famers being inducted this year. It's going to be a special night. And I look forward to it every year, and it's always
Yeah.
that nice buzz right before the football season starts. A lot of people love going to Bet Bash in the sense of also being able to enter the Circa football contests there, because you kind of go to Vegas. You have to enter in person, and then you can use a proxy to be able to make your picks throughout the season. But it's nice to be able to go to Bet Bash and enter the contest and kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So it's an exciting time, man. I can't wait for it.
So when you get one of the tickets that has either the poker or the golf, like let's just take the poker for instance,
Yeah,
does that account for your buy-in to a poker tournament on Tuesday? Is that how
absolutely.
that
Yeah,
works?
the entire that whole the golf and the poker, all that money we put back towards the customer. We're only doing this because people wanted Bet Bash to be longer. So that VIP poker thing, that it's an extra. So VIP is $1,049. The VIP poker is $1,249. That extra $200 we give right to the buy-in and to the rake of what they charge us. We don't make any money on that. We just we're just running the event for people to just have another networking opportunity, to be able to bullshit at a poker table. It's cool playing poker with just random strangers. It's a lot cooler, I think, playing poker with sports bettors, fellow sports bettors. So it's just another networking thing that we kind of want to push. Same thing with golf. We kind of we encourage people, if you insist on having your own foursome, we kind of do a scramble shotgun start with the golf. If you insist on having your own foursome for the golf, that's fine. But we kind of we encourage people to say, why don't you make some new friends? And if people join our golf event, we assign people randomly, and you meet new people, and you never know. Like, everybody says, oh my god, these prices are of these tickets are so expensive. Again, this is a 4-star resort in the Las Vegas, the Circa. It's an unbelievable place to have to throw a party. And I always say that if you just make one connection at Bet Bash, just one, Most people make multiple, but if you just make one connection, the actual cost of the ticket is so minimal. Um, we've literally, and again, I say this, Ed, and I'm not bullshitting. We've made 7 figures worth of connections at BetBash. And we don't, listen, I'm a sports bettor. I'm not a party planner, although I've become one now. But we don't make Bet Bash to make money. This is not, you know, I'm not retiring off of the proceeds, the earn that we make for Bet Bash. Don't get me wrong. I always say I'm not allergic to making money, but at the same time, this is not Bet Bash has not been created to become a money making event. If I was, I was thinking about making multiple Bet Bashes around the country and kind of having it travel like a traveling circus type thing. But then that kind of dilutes the main Bet Bash, and people look forward to that main event. So I like having it just once a year. I was toying with doing something twice a year, but for now, it's going to be always in August, always at the Circa, always just once a year for now.
Before I let you go, Spanky, my favorite thing has always been the scavenger hunt. It looks like it is a nocturnal event this year.
Yes, and this year it's going to be great. We're going to have a nighttime hunt. Um, lots, and as you know, Ed, downtown Las Vegas at night is a sight to behold. So it's gonna be it's gonna be incredible. We're doing a nighttime hunt. We tried to do these 9 a.m. We tried to do a 9 a.m. scavenger hunt in Las Vegas. We can't do anything at 9 a.m. I learned. You know what I mean? This is how you learn things. I don't like. I thought people were gonna. Because I'm thinking 9 a.m. Vegas time. That's 12 noon Eastern. Everybody's gonna be able to get ready to rock. But it's not the
No
case,
way,
man.
dude.
Yeah,
No
Las Vegas
way.
eats people up, spits them out. So
Yeah.
that's why most of our programming doesn't start till 10 a.m. on the speed networking. And then on Thursday, we have an 11 a.m. start because I know that people gamble and people party and stuff. So, and I said, in order for this scavenger hunt to work, we can't do this thing in the morning. We got to do this at night, and we got to make it so that people can go out and still do this and still go to bars and drink and
Right.
whatnot and have a good time. You know what I
And,
mean? So,
and probably make it a little bit shorter than it was 2 years ago because that was long, if I remember
yeah,
correctly.
100%. It was. We wanted to make it. So some people said it was too hard, which is what we wanted.
Well,
Listen,
yeah,
the
it
thing
was
is
hard.
that it was hard, but we had to make it hard because we believe. And again, you tell me if I'm wrong, Ed, but the average IQ of Bet Bash attendees is probably higher than most other conferences. So
It's not. It's not IQ though.
it's
It's
not like
it's it's the ability to problem solve is just absurdly high in this group.
exactly okay. So maybe okay. I guess IQ and problem solving ability is not
They're
is not
not. They're not remotely. No, they're not remote. Not in my mind.
okay, fair enough. I know IQ tests don't they have like different ways to solve different? I guess maybe you're right. I don't know. I don't. Maybe I'm speaking out of line, but okay. So the ability to problem solve is definitely higher than most other conferences. The average ability to problem solve. So I would think that we want to make it so that the last thing we want is to make it too easy. So we had to make it challenging. And again, this is difficult stuff. I'm a gamer myself, so and I have my buddy Manny who helps me design these puzzles. We also have another buddy of mine, Dave Hill, who's helping us design the puzzles this year. So we're doing a lot of puzzle design and kind of making it all make sense. So we're excited about it, and we're definitely don't want to make it too long, but we kind of want to make it casual. You know what I mean? Where everybody's just having a good time, and we're gonna have huge prizes in there. So it's gonna be exciting, man. I think obviously we encourage people to work in teams for that event, and hopefully the turnout will be good.
Spanky, thank you so much for your time today. Please let everyone know where they can find you on the internet and social media.
Yeah, I'm at Spanky on Twitter X, and that's it. You know, what I mean, that's I don't use a TikTok or Instagram and none of that shit. Nobody wants to see my face, so I don't do any of that. Just at Spanky. I don't really answer DMs, even though I have them open. I'm thousands of DMs behind. So
I mean, you
um,
clearly say talk to Chinese Mike if
I
if you
do.
need
I do.
anything.
Yes.
So
Yes. So my profile talk to at Chinese Mike 2. There is a Chinese Mike 1 out there. We don't know who that is, but yeah, at Chinese Mike, the number 2, if you want to partner up and do some stuff together.
Spanky, thanks again.
Ed, you're the man. Thank you, brother.
You've been listening to the Football Analytics Show. My name is Ed Fang, your host. Just a reminder, you can grab my free sports betting newsletter at thepowerrank.com. Really looking forward to getting you more betting and football content as we head into the season. I'll talk to you again soon.